Hey there, Mesa Nation, and welcome to all of those joining us here today. There's been a lot transpiring in the sports world lately, with the NBA trade deadline most recently passing, the NFL season having wrapped up with the Super Bowl, and of course, spring training commencing. But as Ryan would tell you, all we focus about here is baseball and the hometown Washington Nationals. My name is Aaron Witten.
And I'm Ryan Donahoe.
And as per usual, we'll be bringing to you the most up-to-date information on everything baseball related. But today, we'll be hosting a special brand new episode here in our second season of Touch Base, featuring Fantasy Advice 101, taught by, if I remember correctly from last episode, now Nationals GM Ryan Donahoe and myself, and we'll be filling you in on the gaps so that you can not only win your fantasy league, but be a true ambassador of the baseball sport. So, let's get right into it.
Touch Base Fantasy Advice 101. Yeah!
Okay, so I'll start it off with our introduction of what Fantasy Advice 101 will be. So we'll be touching on the top 3 players at every position, starting from the catcher, then we'll transition to the outfield, and trying both the statistical and baseball IQ side of the obvious fantasy baseball season. We'll talk about what each player brings to their team, both defensively and as well in the clubhouse. Finally, each of the players will talk about how they appear to be trending, whether they've been playing better of late or on a downward spiral. So like I said, I'll start that off with the catchers. Our number 1 catcher that we have listed right now for our fantasy player is Buster Posey. He's been on top of the league for a long time now, one of the best catchers there is. He hit .288 last year with 14 home runs and 80 RBIs, racking in a lot of fantasy points for all those who were lucky enough to own him. He's only 29 years old, and he's starting to progress a little bit down to the Joe Mauer route running of playing first base after getting all that wear and tear on your knees there, and of course his horrible ankle injury, which was gross. So next we'll go into the second catcher that we have, Jonathan Lucroy of the Rangers. Had a great year last year after transitioning from the Brewers. He hit .292 with 24 home runs and 81 RBIs. Very productive. He was an impending free agent. Lucroy should deliver similar, if not better, numbers in the dominant Rangers lineup. And obviously that's a great park to hit in, so many people will be looking to add them to their roster. Finally, we have Gary Sanchez, the soon-to-be sophomore of the New York Yankees. He had a great rookie year last year. 20 home runs in just 53 games. He had a .376 on-base percentage. Only 24, as we talked about. Hopefully he avoids that sophomore slump. And he's provided a big upside to that Yankees roster, who of the past couple years seem to be missing something, and hopefully that they can bring that to their team and get them to the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, with Teixeira retiring, Beltran's not there anymore. They've lost a lot of that offensive firepower. I know we've had discussions personally, and I think you like, at least talking to you, Sanchez with those 20 home runs in 53 games. He's got prodigious power, so it'll be interesting to see how that transpires in the fantasy season. All right, so next up, we'll do first base, one of the more interesting positions on the diamond, I think. If you're looking to draft power and really some offensive numbers, then first base is the place to look. The number 1 overall player we have ranked at first base is Paul Goldschmidt of the Arizona Diamondbacks. He hit 24 home runs last year. He added that with 110 walks, 411 on-base percentage, which is incredible. Yeah. And actually, the more interesting part, I think at least, is he added 32 stolen bases to that. So I don't know about you, Ryan, but he definitely, to me, screams 30-30 stolen base home run potential. He has never hit below .286 since entering the league in 2012, and I personally believe he offers some of the best 5 roto category potential of any player, not only at the position but in the majors. Next on the list, we'll have Miguel Cabrera at number 2. He hit .316 last year, 38 home runs, 180 RBIs. I think by now we really expect that kind of production from Miggy. He is a model of consistency, but he is on the older side of things. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's 34 years old, so he is getting up there, but I know that I'm optimistic, Ryan. I don't know about you, but I think he can provide another 2 to 3 years of solid, if not spectacular, offense. He's a building block for most fantasy rosters. Not so much for the Tigers anymore just because of how old he is, but to me, I think that he's really good still, and it's a good question when Father Time will catch up. And then third on the list, we have Anthony Rizzo of the Chicago Cubs. He had 43 doubles, 32 home runs. He had a .252 isolated power percentage, and to me, he's an up-and-coming stud, especially in the lineup that he's in with Chris Bryant and then Kyle Schwarber. I think that at some point he's going to be able to hit that 40 home run plateau. What do you think, Ryan?
I think he could definitely get there. Like you were talking about, I really like Paul Goldschmidt. I think, as you were saying, the 32 stolen bases is not something you see at that first baseman position. So if you can get some stolen bases out of your first baseman, you'll definitely be doing well in fantasy. So I hope he can continue that. Sneaky fast. But next, I'll be talking about the second baseman here. We'll start out with the little guy, Jose Altuve, from the Houston Astros. He does not hit like a little guy, though. He hit .338 last year with 24 home runs and 30 stolen bases. Another guy with potentially 30-30 potential. Well, yeah. He's only 5'6", as I said, 160 pounds. Very impressive what he's been doing. Sometimes you even see him jumping to hit some of those high fastballs. He could possibly be in the conversation for the best player in baseball after he's put up his averages up in the high 330s for the past few years. But his ability to put the ball in play and to get stolen bases are pretty much a guarantee. So he's a great person to have at on your fantasy lineup, and definitely the #1 second baseman. Next, we have our hometown Daniel Murphy of the Washington Nationals. MVP candidate last year. He hit .347, very impressive, 25 home runs, a career high, and 104 RBIs with 47 doubles. He was just racking up the extra base hits all year last year. He hit .411 as the #5 hitter and .342 as the #3 hitter. And with the new lineup with Harper and Turner, it's going to be interesting to see where he'd be. Hopefully he'll see more increased opportunities to drive runners in with Adam Eaton starting the lineup at the top of the lineup, and hopefully he'll be getting on base, and Daniel Murphy will be able to drive him in. Finally, Robinson Cano of the Seattle Mariners is our third second baseman we have on the list. He definitely brings you some power out of that second baseman with 39 home runs last year, 103 RBIs, and 107 runs. He's only in his fourth year of that massive contract that he got a few years ago with 10 years, $240 million, so he'll still be there for a while. But we should hope that he'll continue to put up elite power numbers, even though he is getting through his mid-30s, but it doesn't appear for him to be slowing down. I've been watching actually randomly some of his highlights lately, and he is still pretty impressive with the flair he can bring and the power he can bring out of that second baseman position.
Yeah, I mean, if Jose Altuve wasn't playing and he wasn't in the sport,
Yeah.
I'd say Murphy is the uncontended #1 overall second baseman, just because of what he did coming over from the Mets and the Nationals, that historic postseason, and then the numbers he provided last year. I could definitely see him being in the MVP conversation this coming season, and eventually being one of the premier second basemen and providing excellent fantasy numbers.
Hope so.
So next position we'll go to is shortstop. We have Corey Seager at #1 overall. He had a really good campaign. He won the National League Rookie of the Year. He hit .308, 26 home runs, 105 RBIs. You guys already knew that. He's a giant at the position. Seager is, I believe, a ton better than his brother Kyle. Kyle's a good player, but Kyle's just not able to provide that thump that
Corey would beat
is.
him up too. Corey would definitely beat up Kyle any day of the week. But I'm sure they have put that to the test many times.
Yes, potentially. Maybe they're going to get a boxing license in California like Conor McGregor did.
Yeah, I hope so.
So, yeah, Corey could eventually mold into a 30-home run threat, potentially. So next on the list, we have Carlos Correa. Some of you might be surprised that he is this high, but I believe that we put him this high just because of the potential that he has to offer to fantasy owners. Last year, he had a down year according to his standards and most fantasy owner standards. He did hit 20 home runs, which is excellent for the shortstop position. He added that with 13 stolen bases, so eventually, maybe 20-20 potential. He has been compared to the epic days of Alex Rodriguez production, which is quite a statement.
Yeah.
So some believe Correa will eventually turn into the perennial MVP candidate, and that he'll hit 40 home runs in his heyday, which is excellent for a shortstop.
I'm sure they'd be happy with
So you'd be proud for a third or first baseman, but let alone shortstop. And then our third and final candidate is Xander Bogaerts of the Boston Red Sox. He hit .294. He had added 21 home runs to that. With Big Papi gone, it's going to be interesting to see if he puts up the same numbers. He hit .320 the year before, so his average dipped a little bit, but nonetheless, he's really good at the position of shortstop, and he's going to be looked upon to take a bigger lead in the Red Sox lineup, and with Mookie Betts and Andrew Benintendi behind him. I don't know, what do you think, Ryan? You think he'll have a decent year?
Yeah, I think Mookie Betts is definitely trending upwards. I think he's a great young player. I think really all those shortstops should almost eclipse their years from last year. Corey Seager, young. Carlos Correa young, and Mookie Betts still young. So I think they all have great potential, and it's interesting to see all of these shortstops coming up at still such a young age after all the old guys of Derek Jeter are out of there now. But it's a good thing to see. Next, we'll be going into third baseman, definitely a position you want to get a lot of offensive production out of. #1, we have the reigning MVP of the National League. They're Chris Bryant of the Chicago Cubs. He hit 39 home runs last year with 102 RBIs, scored 121 runs. very good. Obviously, that Chicago Cubs lineup was pretty explosive. He had to do better than the production that he provided last year, but the sky's the limit. I mean, it's not going to be easy to do that again. Obviously, it's not easy to win back-to-back MVPs, but you never know. He could do it. Next is a bit of a hothead in Manny Machado of the Baltimore Orioles. Last year, he had 37 home runs with 96 RBIs, a 6.7 WAR. Great with the glove, obviously makes a ton of great plays. And the other thing about Manny Machado is I think he's another player that's been consistent the past few years. He definitely had a better year last year than he has, but he's getting up there every year with the top of the home runs, RBIs, especially out of the third baseman position. Number 3, I'm a little questionable about whether he should be number 3. We have as Nolan Arenado of the Colorado Rockies. Loves hitting there in Colorado. He had 41 home runs last year, 570 slugging, 35 doubles, and as we were talking about before the show, the addition of Ian Desmond, along with Cargo still on the team, as well as Justin Blackmon, it will be really interesting to see how Nolan Arenado produces. Maybe some more RBIs in his future. We'll see about that. But I definitely think that Nolan Arenado is one of the best players in the Major League.
So you think he should be higher on the third base
list? I think that he could definitely be ahead of Machado. But Chris Bryant, it's hard to be ahead of the MVP. But honestly, if the Colorado Rockies would have made the postseason, I think that Nolan Arenado would have been the MVP, no doubt.
Personally, I think if you get him on draft day, he's a steal.
Yeah.
Don't trade him.
Yeah.
Put him at utility or third base.
Yeah.
The guy has literally put up some of the most consistent production the past couple of years.
Definitely.
So that'll be interesting to see how he does. All right, and our last position, an interesting position nonetheless, is outfield. So as many of you have probably guessed, we have Mike Trout at number 1 overall on the list and potentially number 1 overall in baseball, fighting with Jose Altuve and Daniel Murphy for that spot.
Yeah.
Mike Trout plays for the Los Angeles Angels. He had 116 walks.
Yeah.
So talk about somebody that has an eye. He's right up there with Miggy of the Tigers. He has a really good eye. He put on a .441 on base percentage. He added 30 stolen bases to the line with 29 home runs. If we're looking at somebody that's going to be able to put up 30-30 numbers, I think Trout has some of the best ability to do that in baseball. So if you're looking for stolen bases, he's the guy to go to. He has, as we just said, the best blend of speed and power. He's a premier 5-tool roto player and probably the best player in sport. But that is up for debate because there are quite a few players. Nolan Arenado, to Ryan's point.
Yeah.
So second overall, we have Mookie Betts. He came in second in the American League MVP voting to Mike Trout last year.
Yep.
Mike Trout, come on.
Yeah.
So Mookie plays for the Red Sox, plays center field. He had 31 home runs last year. He had 113 RBIs and 26 stolen bases. Another interesting power-speed blend. Mm-hmm. He'll give Mike Trout a run for his money, but I guess we'll have to wait and see who prevails in that category of MVP overall. And he is safely the second best outfield option. If this is a large if he doesn't undergo a sophomore slump and if he's able to replicate last year's numbers. And only being 24 years old, you're optimistic that hopefully he can bulk up, add some weight, and increase his future power production. And then third on the list, and finally, we have hometown favorite of Nationals GM over here, Ryan Donahoe, Trey Turner. He hit .342 last year. Talk about somebody that rakes. This guy hit .342. He came up. He was in that San Diego Padres deal with Will Myers, right?
Yep.
And, 33 stolen bases. I think, at least for me, you can speak to him in a sec here, Ryan, but he had the .567 slugging. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Talk about the sky as the limit for anybody. I know Bryant's really good, but this guy could potentially 30-30 maybe?
Yeah, you never know. Honestly, one of my favorite moves that I ever made as national GM, getting Trey Turner to DC. He was amazing last year, better than I think anyone could have ever hoped. He hit how many home runs? 20, in the 20s in the home runs after only playing less than 120 games. It was very impressive. He didn't come up until June. Really young guy, and his blend of speed and with his size and still being able to hit power will be very impressive to see. I also think that Mike Trout is probably the best player in the majors right now, but we'll see. He's been very good.
I think that it's interesting. If he'd played a full season, Trey Turner, he could have potentially, if I remember correctly, he could have hit somewhere between 35 and 40 home runs. Yeah. And when he came out of college and he was drafted by the San Diego Padres, he was known for his speed. But I think for you as a Nationals fan and the GM of the Nationals, this is probably one of the best moves he ever made, Ryan.
Definitely.
And he's going to be great for years to come. I mean, potentially if they let, who's that, Harper go to free agency?
Who's that guy?
Who doesn't
Bryce
know Harper?
Yeah.
But if they let him go, this guy would definitely,
he's
maybe one day 3-hitter.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. And some people say he might be the fastest player in baseball, so I would like to see him race Billy Hamilton one of these days.
Oh.
But in closing, for our final fun fact, The lifespan of Major League Baseball, something I've always been interested in, is really only 5 to 7 5 to 7 pitches, and they use upwards of 70 baseballs per game. And those baseballs are, I believe, about $14 to $20 a ball.
Boy.
Lots of money.
Even Angelique's got her mouth wide open.
Lots of money that they spend on baseballs throughout the day. So if you get one of those souvenirs, maybe you can sell it. Finally, it was good. It was another good episode here at Touch Base. Hope you guys tune in again next week or 2 weeks from now. All right. Goodbye. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Touch Base.
Yeah, watch us on YouTube every week. Tune into channel 8.1 at 9:30 every day. And of course, tell all your friends. And thank you for watching Touch Base.